What's up, everybody watching? Game of Thrones Season 6 is now behind us, and we are going to do a review of Season 6, Episode 10, Winds of Winter, which turned out to be one of the best episodes for Game of Thrones in the entire series. I was surprisingly happy with this episode. Following Battle of the Bastards, I wasn't sure how they were going to top it, but they did an absolute hell of a job furthering the plot and giving us a thirst for wanting more for next season. We're going to do a full review of this episode, and this video will contain spoilers. So if you're not into spoilers and haven't watched the series, I suggest you click away at this point. We're going to do this in a piece-by-piece review because there is so many details we have to cover, and hopefully we don't forget any. So let's get started with that. We're going to start this video out by taking it up north. Now, first off, I'm going to start with Bran Stark behind the wall with Cold Hands, aka Bran Stark, and Meera Reed. In this episode, Bran Stark drops off Bran Stark near the weirwood tree, with Meera Reed basically leaves, says he's going to fight the White Walkers as long as he can, and also states something that we've wanted to know for a long time: there are magic spells in the wall that prevent White Walkers from crossing over into Westeros. So now this is something that was speculated, we found out, and it kind of leads me down the line to believe that the wall is going to have to come down in order for the Night's King to invade Westeros. How that is going to happen is another story. But let's talk about Bran Stark. After he was dropped off by the weirwood tree, we finally got the information that we needed. He touches the weirwood tree after stating that he is the three-eyed raven and has to be ready for this. We finally get the final interaction at the Tower of Joy, where we see Ned Stark running up the tower, seeing his sister Lyanna Stark in the birthing bed, dying. Now, the R+L=J theory is now resolved. Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. This was widely speculated for a long period of time, but there were other theories that people also had that could have possibly worked out. I've always been supportive of the R+L=J theory, but this episode completely proved it. And there is a reason why I stated this first. We're going to get on to the next part of this review because it kind of intertwines with each other when you're going with predictions in the future. Now that it is confirmed that Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, this makes another interaction that I saw in this episode a whole lot different than it was originally perceived. There is an interaction between Jon Snow and Sansa Stark on the walls of Winterfell fresh after the Battle of the Bastards, discussing how they have to stick with each other because now they have so many enemies. Sansa emotionally tells Jon that she considers him a Stark, and he seems very reluctant to even accept that, even at this point, after taking back his family's home. I don't understand why he is so unwilling to accept this, but now that we know he is a Targaryen and a Stark, it changes the whole dynamics of what is about to happen. There is a certain sense of emotion that Sansa has towards Jon that I have seen growing in recent episodes. It leads me down the theorist category, where I am wondering if it is a possibility down the line if Sansa Stark and Jon Snow will end up getting married. It is a theory. I would like to see what you guys think in the comment section about that one, but that interaction caught my attention because of that theory. Now, this theory could absolutely blow up in my face and go to complete shit, because there were also other interactions in this show that caught my attention between Sansa Stark and Petyr Baelish, where we finally get an idea of what Petyr Baelish is looking for. And I don't know if this is really a surprise to anyone, but Baelish wants the Iron Throne and he wants Sansa Stark at his side. Basically, he is asking Sansa to get rid of Jon since Baelish still believes at this point Jon Snow is a bastard. This could be a dynamics changer based on some interactions in the show with Sansa and Baelish. I'm not so sure if it's going to go that route. I have a feeling Sansa is going to end up betraying Baelish in the end, but crazier things have happened in this show. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with that one down the line. I'm going that she sticks with Jon Snow, stays with the Starks, and I'm thinking possibly becomes Queen of the North in the end. Again, that is another theory. Let me know what you think about that one. We'll have to see how this one turns out. Another interaction that caught my attention in the dining halls of Winterfell was with Jon Snow, Red Priestess Melisandre, and Davos Seaworth. Now, this interaction I think is going to have a little bit more implications than most people would speculate, and here is why. Now, Davos finally confronts Melisandre about burning Shireen Baratheon at the stake by tossing the little toy that he made for her to the Red Witch and confronting her, asking Jon Snow for justice. Now, she makes some good points bringing up her religious beliefs. Jon Snow would not be here today if it wasn't for her. So, in the end of this interaction, despite Davos' spite towards her, Jon Snow spares her life, which I think was the right decision. Tells her to ride south and never come back, otherwise she will be hanged as a murderer. Davos confronts her and also says if he sees her, he will kill her herself. I'm not so sure Davos is ever going to get that because he seems firmly behind Jon Snow at this point, and I think there's more in store for the Red Priestess. Like she said, if the Lord of Light wanted her dead, she would be dead already, and she has been waiting to die for a long time. What I think is going to end up happening, since she is riding south, by the time she gets there, she will end up grouping with Daenerys Targaryen, since Daenerys has been fiddling around with Red Priestesses. So maybe this group up will eventually happen and we will see her on the side of Daenerys Targaryen. This could be interesting. It could be a way for Jon Snow and Daenerys to talk. She could be the little icebreaker, if you could say that, between the two. It's a theory, but I have a feeling this could possibly happen in Season 7. Another one that we will just have to wait and see about. Now, the final interaction in the North takes place in the Great Hall of Winterfell with Sansa Stark and Jon Snow at the head of the Starks' table, with lords, knights, and wildlings bickering about the future now that Jon Snow has taken Winterfell. The great lords are sitting there saying winter is here based on the White Raven we saw earlier in the episode sent by the Maesters, saying they should go back and take care of their own. And that's the point where this little girl, Lady Mormont, steps up and bitches these great lords out. That was an epic scene where Lady Mormont states that the North remembers, the Mormonts remember, and they only bend the knee to one king, the King of the North named Stark, Jon Snow. I love how Lady Mormont stated, "It does not matter to me, the blood of Ned Stark runs through his veins," and bends the knee, basically shaming the other lords into bending the knee and declaring Jon Snow the White Wolf and the King of the North. I did not see this twist coming in the show. I really didn't expect Jon to end up being the King of the North at all. I actually expected Sansa to become the Queen of the North before that happened. So I was dead wrong on that theory. This was a major surprise. And this can also lead to conflict down the line. If you remember at the head of the Great Table, right at the end of the exchange, you see Peter Baelish looking at Sansa Stark, giving a look of, "I told you." Peter Baelish has stated many times throughout the course of this season that Sansa should be at the head of the table and not Jon Snow being a bastard, and this, I think, is going to create some friction down the line. Eventually, Sansa is going to have to choose between Baelish and Jon Snow, and I don't think one of them is going to make it. And between Snow and Baelish, obviously, you got to put your money on Jon Snow, but we have learned in Game of Thrones never to count Peter Baelish out. So this is going to be interesting heading into Season 7 to see where this goes. Let me know in the comments where you guys think this will be heading. But for now, for the King of the North and the White Wolf, Jon Snow, a great way to wrap up the storyline in the North for Season 6. Now we're going to start to make our way back down south, but at first we're going to stop off at the Twins and discuss the events that occurred between the Lannisters and the Freys throughout this episode. Now this was quite amusing to me. At the beginning of the interaction at the Twin Towers, we have a cute little servant girl serving Jaime and Bran their drinks during a victory party, since the Freys now have Riverrun returned to them courtesy of the Lannisters. Bran, always providing his comedic touch to Game of Thrones, looks at Jaime and basically states to him, while looking at these girls, "You really don't have to do anything, do you? You just sit there and they fall in your lap. They want you to use your golden finger in their twat." Bran said it, not me. So, Jaime Lannister proceeds to go ahead and call over two girls for Bran, introducing him as the hero of the Blackwater. Bran tries to nonchalantly play it off, but in the end goes off with the two girls. At this point in time, Walder Frey comes over and sits down and has a drink with Jaime Lannister. He discusses how he's survived for all of these years and how he feels like he is a great conqueror by taking Riverrun, which was owned by the Tullys for 1,000 years and is now in possession of the Freys. Jaime Lannister completely snubs him like a boss, and rightfully so, saying, "Why do we need the Freys at all if every time something happens with you, we have to come up and bail you out?" Now, this was completely accurate because the Blackfish would have held Riverrun for much longer without a Lannister army at his gates. I didn't see the Freys doing much to take back Riverrun, so Jaime makes a very good point, and it's good that he makes that clear to Walder Frey, because Walder Frey needs to be put in his place. He is one arrogant son of a bitch, and probably one of the worst human beings in the series. Nobody likes Walder Frey, nobody likes the Freys, and this leads to Walder Frey getting his just desserts later in the episode. The servant girl that we were discussing earlier with Jaime and Bran turns out to be Arya Stark. Now this scene, I think a lot of people were waiting for a long period of time. The servant girl serves up a nice little pie to Walder Frey. This pie ends up being the Sons of Walder Frey. Well played, Arya Stark. Prior to killing Walder Frey, she reveals herself as Arya Stark and says to Walder Frey, "The last thing you'll be looking at is a Stark smiling down on you while you die," while she proceeds to cut his throat. The North remembers. Walder Frey finally got his just desserts, literally and figuratively. I did not expect Walder Frey to be killed off in this episode, but it was a nice surprise because nobody in the series likes Walder Frey. Never heard anyone say that. If I'm wrong, please let me know, but Walder Frey is finally gone. It looks like House Frey is on the downfall. Moving forward. Now, as we continue to make our way back down south to King's Landing and discuss the events that happened there, we're going to take a short little detour, and we're going to discuss Samwell Tarly and the events that happened at Old Town. Sam finally has made his way to the Maester's Citadel, where he goes to become a Maester. Now, Samwell and the interaction between the Maester at the front desk was kind of interesting. A lot of their information was off. Jorah Mormont was still considered the head of the Night's Watch at this point. Aemon Targaryen was still alive in their book, and Samwell had to explain a lot of this. Samwell is going to be meeting with the Grand Maester of the Citadel to discuss if he is going to continue with his Maester trainings. In the meantime, he is sent to the library where he sees a ton of books, which basically appears to be heaven for Samwell Tarly. Now, the reason I brought this interaction up is because Gilly and Little Sam are also in the scene, and there has got to be a reason why these two are here and why they made it a point to put this in the final episode. For some strange reason, I think Samwell Tarly is going to be in for a long wait. He's going to get some knowledge from the books that they have at the Citadel, but in the end, I am starting to predict that Samwell is not going to become a maester. I actually have a strange feeling that Samwell is going to end up taking over House Tarly, because if you remember early in the season, Samwell took his father's sword, Heartsbane, and his father is going to be on the hunt for him. So this leads me to believe that Samwell will end up killing Randyll Tarly somewhere down the line. I do not see that happening as a maester. There is a reason Gilly is at the Citadel, and I feel that this is somehow going to disqualify Samwell from becoming a maester, because what do you do with Gilly in this series if Samwell goes into an extended training to become a maester? Let me know in the comment section what you guys think is going to happen with this end of the story, because I don't think it was just put in there for sheer coincidence. Now, before we make our way down to King's Landing, we are on our final detour. We're going to discuss the events that happened in Meereen with Daenerys Targaryen. The first scene we have with Dany is her discussing with Daeron Naharis that he will not be coming to Westeros with her. Him and the second sons will be staying back in Dragon's Bay, newly named from Slaver's Bay, to defend what Dany has already conquered. Now, Daario is clearly not okay with this, as he is Daenerys' lover, but Daenerys, being a complete boss that she is, understands that she cannot let a lover come to Westeros with her. As she states, there is the possibility of marriages to form alliances, which is very interesting that they actually put that out there, because Daenerys has said that she doesn't want to get married again, but she seems to have warmed up to the idea. Now, who could she possibly have in mind? Jon Snow is a possibility at this point in time. We know Targaryens have been known for incest, but there could also be other theories for who Daenerys will marry. If anyone has any, let me know in the comments section, because it is very interesting that they put that in there, since Dany is looking to create allies in Westeros, and the marriage alliance is the best way to do it. So she had to get rid of Daario, and she did it the right way. Daario took it well, moving forward. Now, we also had another interaction with Tyrion Lannister and Daenerys Targaryen afterwards, when Daario realized he was staying back. Now, how could you not like the interactions between Daenerys and Tyrion throughout the course of this season? They have been absolutely great. Now, there's a lot of key things that happened in this interaction, but let's go through them. In the beginning, Daenerys looks like she's coming again to Tyrion to consult him for what she should be doing prior to invading Westeros. Tyrion states to her, "You are in the great game now, and the great game is terrifying," after he asks her if she is afraid. This is the second time Tyrion has asked someone in this series, are they afraid? Could you remember where the first one was? You should let me know if you do. So, after this interaction is stated, Daenerys names Tyrion Lannister the Hand of the Queen. Now, this kind of puts the events in this show full cycle, because if you remember, the Mad King, Daenerys' father, also had a Lannister as Hand of the King. Tywin Lannister was Hand of the King. So if the series does go where Daenerys wins, it will end up with a Targaryen on the throne and a Lannister as Hand of the King / Queen. Interesting way to bring things full circle for the story. I am curious to see how that's going to go, because I am still uncertain if Daenerys is going to win Game of Thrones. There are so many different ways the ending could go with that. I'm curious to see what people think. I plan to put it out, but that is for another video. To wrap up Daenerys' story for Season 6, we have her entire fleet sailing to finally conquer Westeros. She has a formidable army with the Greyjoys, the Unsullied, the Dothraki, her dragons. It just goes on. This force looks to be unstoppable with some of the alliance she has created in Westeros already, thanks to Lord Varys. We will touch on that later. But the final scene with Daenerys is her on her ship, Tyrion at her side, Varys standing behind, Missandei and Grey Worm on the right and the left. This is an epic way to head to Westeros to see if she is going to take the Iron Throne finally. We're going to have to see where this goes. I am unsure of it. There is the possibility in my head that Daenerys becomes the villain in this series. It's there. We'll see if it pans out. But next season should be a hell of a fucking journey to see what happens with Daenerys Stormborn and her huge army. And now we finally make our way down south to discuss the epic turn of events that happened in King's Landing. Never, at the beginning of this episode, did I imagine that we would have Cersei Lannister ruling on the Iron Throne at the end of the events in King's Landing. I actually thought this was going to be the end for Cersei Lannister. When Tommen declared that the Mountain would no longer be able to defend Cersei in a trial by combat, it looked like the end was near, especially at the beginning of this episode when they were playing the slow orchestral music, watching all the characters get dressed prior to the trial for Cersei Lannister and Loras Tyrell. During this process, we also had another phenomenal scene where we have Qyburn setting up Grand Maester Pycelle and killing him with Varys' little birds, saying he was going to usher out the old to bring in the new. At that point in time, I was at the edge of my seat. Being that Qyburn works for Cersei, this was the point where I was like, she's going to try and take the Iron Throne, knowing that she wasn't going to go to the trial. It blew my mind. For the first time in this series, at that very moment, I was sitting at the edge of my television like, no fucking way is she going to take the Iron Throne. This is the biggest twist to me in the story that I just completely didn't see coming. And it is very nice to get one of those, because as a book reader, I knew a lot of the events that were going to occur prior to them occurring, such as the Red Wedding, Battle of Winterfell, but you kind of had an idea of how these were going to pan out. This you just didn't see coming at all. It was just that shocking of a turn of events to me. And even throughout the course of this, while Grand Pycelle is getting murdered, you have the trial going on for Loras Tyrell in the Sept of Baelor from the High Sparrow, notably missing Cersei Lannister and Tommen. Now, I would like to say about Loras Tyrell's trial, this is one of the reasons I don't like the Tyrells, and I'm glad he, meaning Lord Tyrell, and Margaery Tyrell, got what they deserved in the end, because you have the High Sparrow trying the head of your house in front of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't know who this guy thinks he is, but if I was a lord of one of the most powerful houses in the Seven Kingdoms, I would never let a religious fanatic like the High Sparrow degrade my house by trashing my heir in front of the Seven Kingdoms. That's just not going to happen. I would unleash hell on them. I agree with Cersei Lannister in the way she handled it, because this guy got way out of control and got what he deserved. Loras Tyrell is tried, ends up confessing to his crimes in front of his entire family, and ends up joining the High Sparrow as one of his little sparrows. A very degrading moment for House Tyrell, in my opinion. Then you have Cersei and Tommen, who are notably absent, and I guess this is the point where Margaery Tyrell notices these two are absent and something is wrong, telling the High Sparrow that Cersei is not here, so she does not intend to suffer the consequences. The arrogance of the High Sparrow, he sends his little sparrows, one of them being Lancel Lannister, to go find Cersei, like that was actually going to work at that point, which turned into a major twist of events. As Lancel walks out of the Sept of Baelor, he notices one of Qyburn/Varys' little birds. Now, this is another theory. I'm going to stop right there before I go. This is a theory. Is Varys going to end up killing Qyburn? Because I'm kind of thinking the little birds are going to stay loyal to Varys in the end. We'll have to see. That's for another video another time. But for now, we say Qyburn's little birds. Lancel follows one of Qyburn's little birds into the sewers, where he is stabbed, basically on the brink of death, leaving just enough life in him to crawl to the end of a tunnel, where he notices two little candles set by casks of wildfire. And the events that fold after this are absolutely epic. Some of the best stuff we've ever seen in Game of Thrones. Lancel tries to blow out the candle and in the process nukes the entire set. Baelor taking out House Tyrell, his father Kevin Lannister, the High Sparrow, and all of his little birds. They all got what they deserved in the end. A Lannister always pays their debts, and Cersei paid her debts to all her enemies. That is how a queen handles a situation. Boss-ass bitch Cersei Lannister, nuking all her enemies while staring out the window of the Red Keep, sipping a glass of wine with that smirk like a complete boss. I loved the way the entire scene played out, and I'm liking Cersei Lannister even more. I know she is not going to win in the end of Game of Thrones, but oh my god, was it nice to see that scene. Because I've never liked the Tyrells, and I've never liked the High Sparrow and his little birds. So I'm happy with how it played out. You can let me know in the comment section if you guys agree with that. As the Sept of Baelor burns, we got to a scene where Tommen Baratheon is still being guarded at the Red Keep by the Mountain. And this is another speculated theory. Many people thought Tommen Baratheon was going to die this episode, and people thought it was going to be by the Mountain pushing Tommen Baratheon out the window of the Red Keep. Well, it didn't quite play out as expected, but it was close enough. After seeing the Sept Baelor nuked and realizing he was in way over his head, Tommen Baratheon decided to end it all by jumping out the top window of the Red Keep, committing suicide, leaving no more king, and the prophecy of the Valonqar fulfilled, where Cersei Lannister's 3 children have now died. I wonder if Cersei knew this was going to happen prior to the events at the Sept of Baelor because of the prophecy. Now it just leaves the final part of the prophecy where the younger brother kills Cersei Lannister. This is going to be very interesting as to which younger brother it would be, because it could land as Tyrion, landing in King's Landing with Daenerys, or it could be Jaime Lannister based on the scene at the end where he is staring at Cersei on the Iron Throne. Now, I don't necessarily think it's going to be Jaime Lannister. I'm leaning more towards Tyrion killing Cersei, but I'm unsure about this theory. You guys can let me know in the comment section who you think it will be, but that is the last part of the prophecy that needs to be fulfilled, and at this point in time, Cersei Lannister reigns on the Iron Throne. You play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. Words spoken by Cersei in Season 1 that proved to be very true. Now let's get on to the events that happened afterwards. We have the Queen of Thorns in Dorne. This was pretty interesting too, as the Queen of Thorns discusses receiving revenge for House Tyrell with the Sand Snakes. We have a nice little cameo from Varys as he pops out from behind the curtain and states, "Fire and blood. The Targaryens are coming." The entire time, the Dornish were in cahoots with Lord Varys and the Targaryens to take over the Seven Kingdoms, which kind of explains the death of Doran Martell in Episode 1. Now it is time to wrap up this video with one last prediction. We have Cersei Lannister reigning on the Iron Throne at the end of this season. So, now that she's eliminated all of her allies, who does Cersei Lannister ally with in order to maintain the power that she took? She has nobody left. There is one person that caught my attention in this entire series that could bring a fleet to the Lannisters. I'm thinking that Cersei Lannister is going to group up with Euron Greyjoy. We had Euron Greyjoy taking the Salt Throne earlier in the season, but we have Theon and Yara already grouped up with Daenerys Targaryen. So that isn't going to work out for Euron. The plan of going and marrying Dany is just not going to fall in place for him. Cersei Lannister is single. She needs an army. Euron Greyjoy is looking for the Iron Throne. This is a way Euron Greyjoy can achieve the Iron Throne by grouping up with the Mad Queen Cersei Lannister. I'm thinking this is a possibility for Season 7. There are tons of possible things that can happen going into Season 7. I would love to hear from you guys what you think is going to occur. in Game of Thrones Season 7 in the comment section. Sadly, we have an entire year to wait for that. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like if you liked Game of Thrones Episode 10, because it was, I think, the best in the entire series. Sub if you really like these videos and you would like me to put some more Game of Thrones out. Until then, guys, have a good day or night wherever you are. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will hopefully see you in the next one. Later.